Most people do not think much about the bladder until it starts quietly changing daily life. At first, it feels small. One extra trip to the bathroom at night, a sudden urge during the day, a small inconvenience that seems easy to explain away. Many people assume this is just aging. It often isn't. In my 30 years of practice, I've seen this pattern far more often than most people realize. If you find videos like this helpful, subscribe and leave a like. I share these warnings so you can recognize the signs early, before they become harder to ignore. And if you're dealing with something similar or have a question, write it in the comments. What concerns me is how quietly this problem can build. There is not always pain. There is not always a dramatic moment that makes a person stop and pay attention. More often, it begins with small changes that slowly become part of the routine. That is why people miss it. And that is where the danger lies. Patients like you come to me with this exact issue. They often tell me the same thing. They thought it was nothing serious. They thought they could manage it. They thought it was simply part of getting older. But by the time they finally pay attention, sleep is worse. Daily habits have changed. And the body has often been under strain for much longer than they realized. Just last month, a patient came to me with this exact problem. Not because of severe pain, not because of a major emergency. It was simple frustration. They were tired, sleeping poorly, and starting to feel uneasy every time they left the house for too long. For weeks, they kept telling themselves it was minor, but the pattern kept growing. In this video, I want to show you 5 signs that your bladder may be under more strain than you realize. Not to alarm you, but to help you notice the signals early, while they are still easier to understand and less likely to take control of your routine. The first sign is waking up more often at night to urinate. This is one of the most common early patterns in adults over 50. At first, it may not seem important. You wake up once, then maybe again. You blame water before bed. You blame tea. You blame lighter sleep. And sometimes those things do play a role. But when the pattern starts changing, I pay attention. What matters here is not just the bathroom trip. It is the shift in rhythm. If your body used to let you sleep through the night, and now it keeps interrupting that rest, something has changed. The bladder may be more sensitive than it used to be. It may be signaling too early. It may no longer be holding urine as calmly or as efficiently as before. Many people think this is only annoying, but broken sleep is never just a small issue. Over time, poor sleep affects energy, focus, patience, and balance. After 50, getting up half awake in the dark over and over is not something I like to dismiss. I've seen strong, independent people become more tired, more unsteady, and more limited during the day simply because their nights were being interrupted again and again. And what makes this sign easy to ignore is how slowly it builds. One extra trip does not feel serious. Then it becomes routine. Then the body starts expecting disruption. That is often how a small signal turns into a larger problem. The second sign is a sudden urgency that feels new or harder to control. This is when the need to urinate comes on fast. Not soon, not in a little while, right away. People often describe it as a sudden switch. One moment they feel fine. The next moment they feel they need a bathroom immediately. At first, many people try to laugh this off. They tell themselves they just need to move faster. But what I've seen over the years is that urgency often starts changing behavior before people fully admit it. They avoid long lines. They choose seats near exits. They become uneasy during errands, appointments, or car rides. Part of their attention is always on where the nearest bathroom might be. That quiet change matters. Because once a symptom starts shaping how you move through the day, it is no longer a small inconvenience. It is affecting confidence. It is affecting comfort. And in many cases, it means the bladder is becoming more reactive, more irritated, or less steady in the way it sends signals. Some people wait until urgency becomes embarrassing before they take it seriously. That is a mistake I have seen too many times. The body usually gives warning signs early. They just do not look dramatic at first. The next signs are often even more revealing, because once the bladder starts leaving you with the sense that it is not working as completely or as smoothly as it should, the pattern becomes much harder to ignore. The next sign is the feeling that your bladder is never fully empty. This is one of those warning signs people often struggle to describe. They go to the bathroom, but a short time later, it still feels like something is left behind. There is a sense of incomplete relief, a sense that the body did not fully finish what it was trying to do. Many people brush this off at first. They tell themselves maybe they went too quickly, maybe they were distracted, maybe it is nothing. But when this feeling starts becoming a pattern, I pay attention. Because it can mean the bladder is no longer emptying as smoothly or as completely as it should. Patients like you come to me with this exact issue, and many of them say the same thing. They cannot explain it well, but they know something feels off. They are going more often, but the result does not feel satisfying. They leave the bathroom, yet part of the urge still seems to remain. That kind of change matters more than people think. What makes this sign so important is that it often creates a cycle. A person never feels fully done, so they return sooner. Then the bathroom trips become more frequent. Then the mind starts staying focused on the bladder even during normal daily moments. Over time, that repeated awareness begins to wear people down. In my experience, this is where many people start losing trust in their body. They stop feeling settled. They stop feeling comfortable for long stretches of time. Even when they are at home, part of their attention stays on whether they may need to go again soon. That may sound small to someone on the outside, but to the person living with it, it slowly becomes exhausting. And this is where many people make the biggest mistake. They think, at least I'm still going, so it can't be a real problem. But the issue is not only whether urine is coming out. The issue is whether the bladder is working smoothly, fully, and in a way that leaves the body feeling finished. When that changes, I do not ignore it. The next sign is when a person starts planning outings around bathroom access. This is no longer just a body signal. This is a life signal. At first, the change is subtle. A person prefers the aisle seat instead of the middle. They feel better knowing where the restroom is before sitting down. They avoid taking the longer route. They think twice before a road trip. None of these choices may seem dramatic on their own, but together they tell a bigger story. I've seen this happen many times. People do not always notice how much their routine has changed until someone points it out. What used to feel simple now requires planning. A meal out, a church service, a family visit, a shopping trip. All of it begins to include one quiet question in the background. Where is the bathroom? What concerns me about this sign is how normal it can feel at first. People tell themselves they are just being practical. And yes, sometimes they are. But when bathroom access starts becoming one of the first things you think about every time you leave home, the bladder is already shaping your behavior. That matters because it changes more than convenience. It changes freedom. It changes confidence. It changes how relaxed a person feels in public. I've seen strong people become more hesitant, more limited, and more withdrawn simply because they no longer trust how their body will behave away from home. This is not always about fear. Sometimes it is quiet anticipation. A person is never fully present because part of them is always monitoring time, distance, and access. That kind of background pressure adds up, and over time, it can begin shrinking a person's world without them even realizing it. In my 30 years of practice, I've learned that when a symptom starts changing routine, it has already moved beyond minor. The body may not be in crisis, but it is no longer working in a way that feels steady, reliable, or easy to live with. And that is why I do not like it when people wait until something becomes severe. By that point, sleep, movement, and confidence have often been affected for a long time. The earlier pattern was there. It just looked too ordinary to take seriously. The final sign is often the one that brings the whole picture together, because it shows what happens when the bladder is sending repeated signals, but giving very little relief. And once that pattern starts, it becomes much harder to dismiss as a simple part of aging. The final sign is going more often, but passing only small amounts. This is the pattern that often pulls everything together. A person feels the urge, goes to the bathroom, but very little comes out. Then a short time later, the urge returns again and again. What makes this so frustrating is that the signal feels real, but the relief is small. Many people try to explain this away. They tell themselves maybe they are just paying too much attention. Maybe they are drinking differently. Maybe it is stress. But when the bladder keeps sending the message to go, while giving only limited relief, I pay attention. Because that usually means something in the pattern is no longer working the way it should. Over the years, I've learned that the body usually whispers before it screams. And this is exactly the kind of symptom that fools people into waiting too long. It feels inconvenient but not dramatic. It feels irritating but easy to tolerate. So they keep adjusting. They keep pushing through. And all the while, the bladder keeps sending the same quiet signal. Patients like you come to me with this exact issue. They often say, I'm going all the time, but it never feels like much. That matters. Because when frequency goes up but output stays small, it can suggest that the bladder is irritated, overreactive, or not functioning in a calm, steady way. The body is reacting but not resolving. What concerns me is what this does over time. A person starts feeling interrupted all day long, not by one major event but by constant small disruptions. They cannot settle in. They cannot relax fully. Their attention keeps getting pulled back to the same place. And when that happens day after day, it begins to wear down both body and mind. This is where the bigger pattern becomes clear. It is not just the nighttime waking. It is not just the urgency. It is not just the feeling of incomplete emptying. It is not just the need to know where every bathroom is. It is the fact that the bladder is no longer feeling steady, reliable, or easy to live with. That is the pattern I want people over 50 to notice. Many assume bladder changes should simply be accepted with age. In practice, that is not always true. Some changes may come with age, yes, but repeated change is still information. Worsening change is still information. A symptom that begins shaping sleep, movement, comfort, and confidence is not something I would casually dismiss. Now, this does not mean panic, and it does not mean every symptom points to a serious condition. But it does mean you should pay attention when the same signal keeps repeating, especially when the pattern starts growing. The body often gives you time to notice. The mistake is using that time only to adapt instead of paying attention. What I tell patients is simple. Watch for repetition. Watch for change. Watch for patterns that are becoming part of daily life. If a symptom keeps coming back, keeps interfering, or keeps making you plan your day around it, that matters. That is when I stop treating it as background noise. I've seen this brushed off too early many times. And I've also seen how much better things can go when people notice the signs sooner instead of later. The goal is not fear. The goal is awareness. Because the sooner you recognize a pattern, the sooner you can respond to it with clarity. The bladder rarely starts with a dramatic warning. More often, it starts with quiet disruptions that seem too ordinary to matter. That is why so many people miss it. And that is why I wanted to walk through these 5 signs with you today. If some of these patterns sound familiar, do not ignore that. Pay attention to what has changed. Pay attention to what keeps repeating. The early signs are often the most useful because that is when the body is still giving you a chance to notice the pattern before it becomes harder to live with. If this video helped you, subscribe for more guidance like this. And if you've noticed any of these signs yourself, or if you still have questions, share it in the comments.